don't mean this as a criticism. I mean this as an opportunity. And think, how are you living your life? When you wake up in the morning, you think about going to work, right? You think about what you've got to do, your obligations to your family, having to go to the grocery store, whatever, what shows are on tonight. This is normal human life. Nobody looks down on you for this. Nobody should look down on you for this. But think about the opportunities that you have, right? Because there are no heroes. Nobody's going to save you, right? There are only heroic actions. There are only heroic choices. There are only people who moment by moment see bad things and recognize, maybe I can do something. Maybe I can't fix everything, but maybe I can make progress. Maybe I can make things better. Maybe I am the one that I'm waiting for. And as soon as you start thinking like that, you'll realize that you are.
Firstly, there's always got to be hope no matter what darkest situation that you're in. And the hope right now is that not only are we supporting ourselves as a family unit, but we're supporting a community. An idea that we can do something that nobody pays us for and nobody gets paid for. That's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about all these people who are doing things that are just purely to help. What about you?
It reminds me of when I was young and kind of carefree, because I've been having really good sleeps and stuff, and I don't have any responsibilities because all the things that you've been organising for ages have been put on hold. So you can basically get out of bed when you want to and have a sleep in. I've had a really great sleeps and stuff like that. But the thing itself, it's difficult to take it in, to take the thing in. You don't know what's happening. You just have to think of ways of working around it. And keep yourself busy with the right kind of things and try and keep functioning without getting too tied up with the big splash news headlines and stuff, because at the end of the day, none of us know what's really happening here.
Yeah. But again, what we need to remember is we didn't know what was happening before all this started either. The only thing that we knew that was happening at that point was we were being exploited, whether it be in the workplace or when we went to the shops, and what we were paying and how we were paid. Because we all live in these idea of, a credit card or signing the dotted line. So
yeah, well, I mean, at the end of the day, we've still got global warming,
yes.
endless wars, poverty. These things are all sitting waiting in the wings. It's the virus is taking over the headlines just now, but we've still got all these other things. But the basic idea is that it shows you that capitalism doesn't work. They're not interested in science. They're only interested in economics. That's all they can do. That's why they're so useless in this situation, because the British Empire and things like that, they've been doing this for years, starving people, the droughts, famines in India, the last 600 years, that's how you've been treating countries. So it's no different just now that they would treat their own people with the same disdain in terms of trying to look after the economy rather than trying to look after people.
Well, that's demonstrated with how they're telling people we're paying 80% of your wages, but they're not. They're paying that to businesses and they're guaranteeing businesses 80% of their profits. But again, what does that mean to somebody who's on not enough to live on at the beginning of it? So again, the whole idea is we need to even the distribution. Not only the distribution of wealth, but the distribution of workload and pressures.
But on the other hand, what do we do in this interregnum this mess. You know, we have to stay at home. We have to disenfranchise ourselves from everybody else around about us. But our mind is still intact. Our mind is in solitary confinement. We can still think. We can still contact each other. We can still organise. Because we're going to have to think of a way out of this. You know, we're only 2 weeks in. And things are going to get difficult before they get better. And I know people have got a lot of problems about running about, looking after people and doing this and money and worry and stuff like that. But we really have to spend some of this time in organising what happens after this situation, because there's going to be another one coming along that's going to be built with the same rules and regulations. And so it's either a case of socialism or the neoliberal Project 2, which is going to be a hell of a lot worse than Project 1. So our kids and young people, future generations, are sitting about at this moment. What do we do for them? How do we prepare ourselves for the next generation to get some benefit out of the situation we're in just now? And I think we can only do that with reconnecting with our humanity and thinking about the basic things in life that we need to conduct ourselves as human beings.
Well,
Like,
again, you've even spoke about it, right? We're having to distance ourselves from each other physically, but already we're seeing, you know, groups being set up to connect to people who have nobody to speak to but have access to technology, etc. And again, what I'm describing there is we've got a cooperative approach that's evolving through necessity. We're reinventing how delivery services work, because we're now understanding that there are lots of people in the community who, in a dog-eat-dog world, would just die without the support of the community. So that's maybe what we should be using to prepare ourselves, understanding the strengths that we're demonstrating just now, that strength of cooperation and mutual aid. And as we come forward and go out of this, then how we supply services to each other should be dealt with that same consideration, that the purpose of the service is not to generate wealth or profit. The purpose of the service is to keep somebody alive. It's to keep somebody fed. It's to keep a child in the education system. So these are services that are contracted to local authorities. So again, in a society that is now evolving this community spirit, why can't we extend that into being self-sufficient as communities as we go forward? Because all of these people working from home, right? So what they'll understand is the if you work away for the house all the time, you don't realise just what's missing for the infrastructure run about your property. Now you're forced to live in that property 23 hours a day. You will understand every idiosyncrasy of it, and especially going forward.
Aye, but there's a lot of people who are will be very busy and be working away. I mean, the food groups and different things like that, they'll be running about sort of trying to get organised and feeding people and serving that kind of cultural community thing about keeping it together. But we need to be much stronger than that. You know, we need to come out of the thing fighting and making demands and saying, look, we're not doing this stuff anymore. We want this idea. You know, we keep blaming things in the system and the banks, corporations and all this, but we really need to think about what part of the problem do we fit into as people? Because corporations and these people have been doing this for hundreds of years. You know, when you think about it, it's only in the last 300 years that this economic system has taken over, and it's been one of pillage, you know, and taking over countries and stealing this. This is nothing new. But in the course of time, it's a very short amount of time. 300 years is nothing, you know, in the time club of the world and stuff. And it's run out because it's been too greasy. So it's basically fucked the whole thing up. And we need to get back to some kind of assemblage of being human beings again and thinking, we don't have all this stuff. We can't just keep going to Amazon or taking things out the fields and thinking it's going to be endless. So this is a time for thinking. You know, the groups that are out there in the field running about helping people, they don't get any time to do anything else, or if they think about anything else. But there's a lot of other people sitting at home who should be using their brains, because what happens is when you look at a lot of these podcasts and news, they're just talking about the war being bad the whole time, you know, about how terrible it is in China and what's going to happen here, what's going to happen there, what's going to do that. When really they should be spending time dealing with the most difficult thing, is how people organise their way out of this thing. Letting this in the 70s, we were talking earlier about Malcolm X, you know, the Black Panthers. I mean, the Black Panthers were giving kids breakfast before they went to school and stuff. They were feeding hungry people. But they were a unified group that had power. And they could walk into the middle of New York, you know, and the NYPD had to stand aside because they knew these people meant business. And that's the kind of thing we have to build here. You know, it's not all just about community and cultural work. It's about how you repoliticise people and get them to think serious about what's happening round about them. Not only the pandemic we're in just now, but what's going to happen when we're getting out of it. So it's not a case of, how are you going to keep busy, you know, and downloading films off the internet. So there's loads of stuff on the internet that can be educational, that can help you to understand what the fuck's happening just now and help you to think ways out of it, rather than just being a victim in the circumstances of what the government decide that they're going to do next.
But I mean, the whole idea of sustainable services is what should come out of this. And that should, I'll explain what I mean, but that should provide a cushion between commercial exploitation and consumerism. Right now, the government's bailing out every business, right? Especially those that are still functioning at the moment, i.e. transport. So you've got the groups like Get Glasgow Moving. Now, they're also tied up with things like the Association of British Commuters. So you've got a politicised movement there that's already trying to lobby politicians of all the parties to say, look, we need an ethical solution that not only supports the environment, but supports the needs of the 1 in 3 people in Glasgow who don't have access to a car, right? So again, the whole idea of this is, if we've already put all that money into that company, then surely there should be some value returned from that company. In other words, we're buying these companies in effect. So why shouldn't it be set up as cooperatives owned by the communities? Again, the bus service being a classic example, because one of the first things that we'll need is an infrastructure.
And the other thing is living rent campaign. You know, what
sustainable sustainable services. We need sustainable housing, not this idea that you build a house to make a profit on it.
But I mean, living rent, I don't know how many people have joined living rent now, but it's one of the crucial. I mean, if you go back again to the 70s, you know, there was a lot of crap housing about, but it was crap housing you could afford. You know, you could rent a flat, an unfurnished flat, and get kicked to it 2 weeks later. But there was always one around the corner that you could, you know what I mean? So if you're worrying about rent the whole time, you can't do anything. You're too worried about the rent. How can you act? Obviously, Thatcher, you know, get them onto households and mortgages.
Because every bit of imagination is trying to work out where you're going to get your money from.
Aye. So why is living rent still a relatively small organisation? It should be massive. Yeah. Because it's trying to deal with one of the most basic fundamental things that
shelter.
people open and free enough to think and use their mind. You know what I mean? And the buses, these are things you can go the length of breadth Glasgow or Britain, and you look at people who disagree. We need a good regulated bus infrastructure, travel infrastructure, and we need decent rents.
Right.
These are powerful things. This is how things like the Black Panthers and stuff, they're related to people's basic needs, not all this, consumption and sort of like we all deserve this and that next. Basic needs, if you look after them, people might actually start thinking again and get some pleasure out of thinking.
It's not always about competition. Sometimes it's just about completion. Yeah. Completing the task, no competing to see who can do the task or how much profit you can make for the task.
Yeah. And this time, to me, there's not a better time for organising, people organising themselves and starting to use the internet and all this infrastructure we've got, because nowadays it's, these, I was talking to you about earlier, these organisations like Truth Out, these big American websites that have been doing great work with these visionary sort of academics and reporters, journalists, doing really good work, and they've been going for years. And the money is, even the private funders are pulling out them because we don't agree with the Democratic Party and stuff like that. Democracy Now and different things. A lot of these independents are starting to backpedal, and they're being bitten into. And it was mentioned earlier that the Bill Gates Foundation is giving the BBC, $50 million for one of their newscast functions, which I can't remember. Bill Gates giving £50 million to the BBC, and we're talking about bias, impartial news and stuff for the BBC. So it's more important that people start communicating and discussing things on the internet and starting these podcasts. You do what you have to do.
Yes.
And you get information out and you discuss ideas, and it gives people the impression that we might have some place to go, because they'll take this technology off us as well with these brilliant news outlets, left-wing news outlets. They're starting to narrow into them, taking the money out of them and all this kind of stuff. And they'll do that here as well, because they don't want to deal with science. They want to deal with economics. And what you're getting in these websites is the science, actually what's happening. But obviously the neoliberals, they can't think about science because they'll go down if they do. So they have to keep it economic.
But one of the biggest problems is right now the stock market's still open, right? So there's volatility in that, and if you predict bad news, it affects it. Now, right now, everything's pretty bad news. Even the glimmers of hope are still bad news, but it's just that they're less bad news than yesterday. But these guys are still profiting from it. And to protect that mechanism so that it doesn't implode, they don't want to predict bad numbers. But again, I mean, if you take 20,000 and you divide it by 3, right? So here we go, roughly 6,000. If you then take that 3,000, which is 30%, so if you imagine 30% of that 20,000 people get infected, and only 1,000 of them, 1% of them are going to get, you understand what I'm saying? These are the kind of things that they don't want to predict, right? It becomes horrendous. The numbers are massive. So the real problem is it's the way that they're trying to misinform. If they just gave us the statistics unmassaged, you don't need to break down into the figures. We all understand it's a trend that we're trying to understand. We all want to know that is this sacrifice worth it? And of course it is, because the statistics will bear that out. But right now, we're all sceptical, because when people like Boris tell you it's okay to shake hands, and he ends up in ends up in isolation, in quarantine, because he's been shaking hands and he's actually caught the virus, then that explains to you that there's either an incompetency or an ulterior motive to what he said. And in either way, it's still bad news. But again,
the incompetency is the fact that he is the leader of the country.
yes,
You know, so you get at least 50% of the country are thinking this guy should be the intelligence of where we're going and where we're not. I mean, what is it ordinary people don't understand about Boris Johnson and the neoliberalism? You can say a lot of young people have grown up with it and they don't really know anything else, but you're actually getting intellectuals and journalists and all this kind of completely. I mean, all the stuff about the, Corbyn with the anti-Semite stuff, and that just goes in the back burner and people forget about it. And then the
misdirection.
The next big rush of lies comes in, misinformation, and like Trump's famous for it. You just come up with another big problem, and people forget about the problem before it can be. And people have lost this basic instinct about looking after each other. They've lost it.
Yeah,
it's in the
as soon as you try and scrutinise something that's already happened, you're being negative by looking back. Oh, we can't look back. We've got to look forward. Stop looking back at what I've done. And because they know how many mistakes have been done, whether it's Boris Johnson or Donald Trump or Emmanuel Macron, whoever it is, they've all made these gaffes because they make these carte blanche assumptions when they're so disconnected from the decisions that they're making.
But they don't really make assumptions. They protect.
Yeah.
They protect their economy that works for them. There's no clever stuff about it. It's just, we need this and we don't need that. If it's a case of money or people, will go for the money. And you'll see anything or do anything to preserve that. I mean, the problem people don't realise now is this is such a threat to the right wing. It's like if somebody comes in and and says, right, okay, I'm going to take all the furniture out your house and that, and your Wayne isn't getting any more school dinners, or we're going to cut your man's wages. And that's what they're feeling. That's what the upper classes are feeling just now. It's the same kind of threat. These people are trying to threaten how we've lived for the last 200 or 300 years. And Boris is one of these people who knows fuck all about how ordinary people live or anything else. But people will still go and vote for them. And then we'll get Corbyn with some good ideas. Now they're starting to pick up Corbyn's ideas and try to call them their own. You know what I mean? And you go, he's no vicious enough with these people. He should have said this, he should have said that, he should have said the next thing. But then again, he's only one man. There's a whole party behind him. There's lots of people who are responsible for what happened because Corbyn didn't get in. Plus, you got all that news media and all these people blatantly lying to their back teeth to stop them from getting in because they have to defend their money. At all costs, they must defend their money. And it's the same in America. They will happily deal with Trump rather than deal with the socialists. They'll deal with anything.
They have to protect the secrecy.
Because if you get a socialist in anywhere, it means you have to discuss things. You have to talk about things. You have to be open about things.
Yes.
And that's the last thing they want because they've built this empire, particularly over the last 20 years. And we've all bought into it. We're all neoliberals, one way or the other. We've all bought some of this stuff, a bit. And if we're talking about the trickle down corruption, no trickle down, like the big ships will rise with the small ships. It's trickle down corruption, and everybody's bought into about this corruption, and that's why they won't say anything about anything that's happening above them because they're going to expose themselves. And that's why you've got all these journalists and all these people who you thought were quite intelligent turning around and saying, yeah, Corbyn's an anti-Semite and this, and you're going, they're protecting their interests. So that'll need to do is just now because we're on the cheapo limitation. But I think we should do a few more of these videos and just speak about ideas about how we can think our way out of this crisis, because there's going to be another one after this, and we need to start organising. We need to start understanding what's actually happening in the background here and start organising against it, rather than just being carried along with the flow of what the BBC, etc., are telling us.
The future is cooperative. Simple as that.
Okay. Catch you in the whirlwind.
Catch you soon.